Hi, welcome to the video. So this is going to be another comparison video between Libera'Sean and Scott Nuttall, comparing opinions as well as screenshots and videos to try and come to some conclusion. Now, if you haven't already, I did previously do a comparison video between the two with their nighttime hike experience of when they were followed out by something. If you haven't seen that yet, make sure to click on that icon top corner of the screen to check it out. So yeah, in this video I'm going to be hopefully trying to get to a conclusion of the covered up cave, specifically in Libera'Sean's video, and which was also present in Kenny's M-Cave hike video. Now, I have done an analysis, close-up look of it with screenshots, changing the brightness setting, being able to look further within and maybe revealing more than what you can see from a normal unedited picture. Make sure to check those out before watching this to get a better understanding. There should be an icon top corner of the screen once again, because it will help, you know, come to a better explanation and understanding. If you've already watched them, make sure to continue watching this video. So basically, the reason why I'm doing this video is obviously to try and come to a conclusion, because I feel I haven't come to an ultimate one yet, to give my opinion as well, but also because Scott is a new hiker and he's looked in quite a few caves, more than the other M-Cave hikers have. I've been able to like look up close at all the different caves, the colouring of them, the rock structuring, etc. And within one or two of the hike videos, I noticed one odd thing. In my opinion, how I perceive it, I noticed one odd thing which kind of links or is kind of similar to the covered up cave, or the Keyhole cave, which is next to the covered up cave. I'm going to do a comparison between the two. So just to re-jog memory, just to do a breakdown, a short one, I'm going to show Libera'Sean's cave footage cut up in brief with the markings and stuff, and then we'll do it from there.
You have the hole here. You have this piece that doesn't match this piece, or this piece doesn't match this piece.
Well, from what Sean says in an observational viewpoint, it's true that yes, there is a hole there towards the middle of the screen. He did put the camera and look through it, and I also did the analysis up close of that to try and look further within, which was somewhat successful. Make sure to check that out. But additionally, with Sean saying how some of the rocks don't match up with one another, that is true if you used to base it off the colouring of the rock. I'm no expert, so I wouldn't know if it's natural or not for that sort of stuff to happen. However, one thing I will say is, later on in this video, there is kind of a comparison with this rock structure and colouring of rock with some of Scott's videos, which we'll get into.
This is like, looks like it might have been the top of the cave right here.
Whilst it's true what Sean says from like an above viewpoint, that is probably the top of the cave. The only problem is, if you look at this picture and you look at the way the rocks are, there's quite a few gaps and cracks within the rock, and that's on top. It makes you wonder how much of it is actually loose, because Sean said on the front part, the entrance of it, rocks placed together and they're all loose. What does that mean about the ceiling, the top of it? Does that mean all that's loose as well and that's all been put together? Kind of gets a bit confusing, because then you start tracking back more and more and you start thinking, well, that's loose, that's got a crack in. Does that mean that's joined up with that? Does that mean that's unnatural as well? Kind of goes off a bit, doesn't it? I mean, if the top of this cave was just completely smooth, or it was one big slab of rock without many cracks in or holes, it'd seem more believable, I guess, because it's only the front part, the entrance, which has all the smaller individual rocks on top of one another. That's not the case though. But let's continue.
And then this was put here, this was put here, this was put here, This was put here. This was put here. This was put here.
Right, so you get where this is going and what Sean believes it to be. Now let's compare it to one of Scott's hike videos with a similar rock structure and what he believes it to be.
See how these ones are laid to where there's a gap? And he was saying that behind those rocks is a cave. It's just the way the rocks are.
In this example though, yeah, it does look natural. But, you know, is it a fair comparison? Well, it was the only one that really popped up in his videos, and it was the only time he really made proper reference to Libera'Sean. Basically, it looks like there's 3 slabs of rock. This one here, and this one here. And obviously there's like a V-shaped gap. And some people could assume, oh, it's been covered up or something's been placed there to stop people from getting in. But I agree with Scott on this one. That is natural. There's nothing really odd going on there. But, you know, maybe it's not the fairest of comparisons to Libera'Sean's cave, what he's come across. Because, you know, the one on screen right now, there's no real shape to it or outline to make it look like a cave to begin with. And it doesn't seem to go in, does it? It doesn't really show much depth. Whereas, as I said, with Libera'Sean's cave, what he was looking at, the covered up one, he did put the camera in and you could see that it went so far in. Whereas on this one, it doesn't really show much, does it? So it's kind of mixed reviews. But I will conclude and agree that what Scott says, for this example, it is natural.
They're very porous and they're...
So I just wanted to pause the video briefly because as Scott pans around, as you can see, on that rock, there's all that weird white stuff. I don't know why it is. It's probably just the texturing, colouring of the rock itself. But you can quite clearly see it. The reason why I just wanted to point that out is because if you hear in Libera'Sean's video of the covered up cave, Sean does keep talking about some kind of white paint or white sealant on the rocks. Now we'll get to that point later on, but I just wanted to point it out right now.
And they have cracks. That's not the M cave.
Now, although Scott was referencing that other like rock structuring as being natural, as he did pan the camera around, I did notice this, which kind of looks like a cave, the shape of it, but I guess Scott was referencing this as well, but he wasn't aiming the camera on it. So I guess you just got to assume that he's talking about this as well. But you can see like the outline of it, it does look like a cave. And then obviously you look at these rocks and some of them do look separate, individual ones, which are kind of piled on top of one another. That's not meaning to say it's been covered up. That might just be the way it is naturally. But I wanted to bring this one up because this is a probably better example than the previous one, which is similar to Sean. So we go across, you know, you got all these rocks, and obviously these rocks are a bit bigger, but there is gaps in between them and cracks that go all the way down. You compare that to that. There's gaps there, obviously. Gaps down there. So you got Scott's and you got Sean's. Kind of similar. But if they look similar and they've got certain structured characteristics, but in Scott's this is natural, then does that mean this applies as being natural as well, if it's similar? So yeah, there's that to take into mind. So yeah, that was the comparison of the rock structuring and the gaps within the rocks between Libera'Sean and Scott. Is it the fairest of comparisons? Not really, because Libera'Sean's, what he came across, the structuring of that, the size of it, and the shaping of it does look more like a cave, at least the outline of it though. Whereas Scott's, that just looks like a side of a rock face, side of a wall. But, you know, I think what Scott was trying to get at was it wasn't just that one piece of rock. He was probably generalising it to like other rock structuring which is around him from like the hikes he has done and covered in his videos. So I kind of get where he's going at, but the reason why I showed that comparison was because it was really the only comparison I could do, because I did look through Scott's videos and it was probably the only time when Scott actually referenced Libera'Sean. So that's why I showed that specific clip. So yeah. So let's get on to the comparison with the sealant and that weird paste.
So it is true what Sean says about, you know, the ground, the base of it being quite flat and somewhat smooth. That's true. That being the base of it there, and then that being like towards the bottom of the covered up cave as it meets with the ground. And obviously between it there's some kind of seal or something. Might just be rock itself that's kind of fused together or just formed close tightly. But there is a bit of colouring, as Sean says. You know, you got this weird orange stuff. Don't know what that is. Is it some kind of minerals, some kind of resource? Is it some kind of rust? Probably not. I don't know, I'm just throwing ideas out there. But then there is a gap there. So does it, let's say there was a seal that goes all the way across the bottom of it. Some white stuff there. But then they've kind of missed sealing it up there because there's a gap at the very bottom. So was it a poor job or was it just natural? Additionally, there further to the left, I think that's a continuation of what I was talking about, the gap. That was that. So it continues on across, and then you've got all this going on. That just looks like rock to me, joined up together. But, you know, there is the odd bit of, you know, colour in between the different layers of rock and so. So, you know, let's move on to the next piece.
Look at this. That does not match up.
So this angle is of the covered up cave side view on the left hand side, and Sean says about, you know, the two rocks don't really match up together because they are separate. There is a line that goes straight down the middle all the way down to the bottom, and that makes you think, well, the rocks aren't connected together then, so that's kind of odd. But I guess the other point and key focus is that white smear mark that goes so far down. Now that is seen in the odd few other areas, and Sean does make reference to that.
You see, like these lines. You see these lines. They're so unnatural. And then there's like this white paste in all the cracks.
So yeah, there is the odd few white smear marks. Don't stand out as much here though. Don't look suspicious either. And yeah, there is the odd few gaps within rocks, but that isn't the focus right now. Reason why I'm pointing this stuff out is because now I can compare it and go back to one of the observations I made earlier with the white smear marks, which I'll show you now in Scott's. We are here again with this screenshot. Now I did label the pictures so you know whose is who. And as I said before, with Scott's, you can see all these white smear marks or whatever they are. They do stand out and they're all over the rock. Preferably where the gaps are and the cracks are, from the looks of it at least. We compare that to Sean's, it kind of does look similar. Especially near the gaps and the areas there. You can see the odd few white markings. Such as there. And further up. So there is some kind of similarity. Now additionally, a different angle of the covered up cave which shows more and is this one, if you remember. You can see this white marking here on the end of the rock. It goes so far down. That does look similar to this of Scott's. Now, with that being in mind, if Scott's video, which picks up all this white marking, is to be natural and only natural, then you could generalize that, and then that would mean this marking is natural as well, and it's just part of the rock. I'm no expert, but what I would say is there is definitely a similarity of Scott's video with this white marking, and it links on to Sean's, as seen as in this photo and that photo. So it basically branches off one of two ways, obviously, that if what's visible in Scott's video is all natural, then that must apply to Libera'Sean's covered up M cave, if it's basically the same colouring and it's natural from the rock. So the next thing I want to move on to, which kind of ties in both the seams and the markings, as well as the rock structuring and the colour contrast between Libera'Sean's and Scott's. Now, in the next clip I'm going to show you, it's not of the covered up cave, but it's of the Keyhole cave, which is literally right next to it, a shallow cave. And then next to that small shallow Keyhole cave is that other shallow cave, which is literally shaped like an M. So I'll show you that now.
Clearly, I mean, it's got that same like white seam, who knows?
You can see the lines follow. There's a line there that goes down, and then there's also a line here. It goes down here, like that. But, you know, you can see some kind of marking there, kind of white, which looks a little bit similar to the covered up cave. You know, it might just be the join marks of where different rock meets with one another, if you get me. You know, the different layering or the different types of rock. You know, you've got this black, darker rock up here, which is quite bumpy. And then you've got a completely different colour of rock here, a bit smoother. And then a slightly lighter rock there, I think it is. And then also you've got this light grey one there on the right hand side. So different layers of rock does, you know, stand out and looks a little bit odd, if you want to call it that.
And then clearly, you know, we have the same.
Yeah, so once Sean exits that shallow Keyhole cave, right next to it, the M-shaped shallow cave, kind of a similar rock structuring and colouring. You know, it's dark rock once again within, but then like the base of it or the ground of it, it's kind of light grey, and there is like a divide, you know, like a line between the two, so that kind of stands out. But that might just be the way the rock is and how they connect together. So let's now do a comparison to Scott Nuttall's, because there is a kind of similarity.
Kind of like a tunnel here that caved in. They're following the rust. And I don't see anything interesting as far as gold.
So I paused it because obviously a key thing that I noticed which did stand out immediately was that like white mark, that white seam, but as well the different colouring of rock. You know, if we look down here, we got some like dark rock or whatever, then you got a lighter shade here, and then you got the brown stuff, and then kind of more beigey or so up here. And then additionally, which runs down, this kind of white mark. And as you can see, kind of like ground level, lower down, it does come down more. So that's a little odd, the way it is. Now, as he said, Scott, some kind of tunnel that caved in. I don't know if he's referring to this one or the other cave entrance ahead, because nearby there is some kind of mine which goes down like a drop, and then it's kind of blocked off by all rubble and everything because it must have caved in on itself. So I don't know if he's referring it to this one on screen right now or the other one. But the reason why I showed this is like a similarity between the Keyhole shallow cave, the shallow M cave one next to the Keyhole, and Scott's, and I'll do a side-by-side comparison now. So obviously on screen is Scott's, the one I was just showing you before. Let's compare that to Sean's. So both are shallow caves. This is the Keyhole shallow cave, and then the other one is Sean's, which is next to the shallow Keyhole cave, is the M-shaped one. And basically, is there any similarity? Well, in Scott's, as you can see, different colours of rock or texturing, whatever. So you got brown, you got grey, and then you got dark there. We compare that to that. All this is one colour for most part of it. But then down here, there's like a lighter patch that stands out between the dark and that. So that's similar to this. It's literally the same colouring. Yeah. As for this one though, like how you got those, like how you got those lines that run down, and then the one round here. Further down here, it does get a bit lighter. Now I don't know if that's part of it or. And so does this have lines as well. However, these lines are white, much more brighter than these, because these are like brown marks. It blends in more, whereas this doesn't blend in as much. So that's taken into consideration. Okay, so it comes down to the conclusion. So set aside the idea of it being the M cave and just base it down to two simple outcomes. Option A, it is a cave and it was covered up. Or option B, it's not a cave, it's natural rock formation. As I did the similarities and differences, one of the key similarities was some of the white smear marks on the rock. So in the covered up cave of Sean's video, on the rock side of it, there was like white marks and stuff. Now, similar in Scott's video, same happened there, obviously, because you saw all those white markings. All those white markings in Scott's video looked quite natural, to be honest, because of the location. You know, it's far south, doesn't seem as much dodginess over there, and, you know, there was too much of it, so it looked too suspicious. You know, if someone was to do something dodgy, they would make it a clean job, I guess. So, you know, I guess you can debunk that. So that white paste and stuff on some of the cracks on the rocks on the front facing side of the covered up cave and on the side, debunked. It's natural because it's similar in Scott's video. Now, a difference though would be like the sealant, whatever you want to call it, at the bottom of the covered up cave, as well as in the shallow Keyhole cave, because yes, you can see some kind of texture and some kind of line going across, kind of looks smooth, but it's a different colour to the ones in Scott's video. So that raises a little bit of question. But in terms of just the simple white markings and on the rocks itself, on the covered up cave and around the side of it, that seems natural. Now, the other one was the rock structuring. Well, we're basing it off that. The rock structuring, the cracks and the gaps within, like the dark spots, is similar to Scott's video, how he points out the cave and says, you know, these rocks, the way they're on top of one another, it's just natural and there is cracks within them, etc. So I guess you could say there's similarity there, and you could argue at that point that basically debunks it and says that the covered up M cave in Sean's video is not a cave at all, because it has similar characteristics in terms of the structuring of the rock as seen in Scott's video. And then you could rule it out just like that. The only thing why I don't go along that line immediately, and why I still hold back and think it could be at least a cave that's been covered up, is like I did the analysis video, and like how Sean did try and put the camera up into that little hole or so. You know, you look within and there was some kind of depth. It wasn't shallow, it looked kind of deep. Now obviously, if rocks were pulled away, it would all be answered, but it's not always that straightforward, obviously. But if there's depth, and in my opinion it looks like there is from the analysis I did, you know, it makes me believe it could be a cave. I'm not saying it's some kind of dodgy cave, I'm just saying it's a cave. That's how I feel in terms of the conclusion. Now, is there anything else? Well, you know, the seal in the keyhole cave, the shallow one, and the other shallow cave next to it, which was in a shape of the M, you know, that had some kind of seal or lining that goes across. That might just be because of where the different rocks join up and meet up, because the different rocks, different textures or so, different types, you know, when they're combined together, maybe there's some kind of overlap or some kind of connection. I don't know how to really explain it, but, you know, that's the next point. Is it really strange that there's different colouring of rock that meets up with one another, like in the Keyhole cave? You know, Sean did say that was a bit weird, maybe it's all been filled in. Well, if we look back at Scott's video, where he was looking at that shallow cave next to that mine, well, you saw the different colours of rock there, so that looked natural. It is why it was. Maybe that applies to the covered up cave. However, counterpoint, the reason why I think it could still be a cave, you know, we're linking back to the covered up cave itself, forget the Keyhole cave, back to the covered up cave in Sean's video. Certain characteristics are shared with the shallow cave in Scott's video, and if in Scott's video that area, which was originally used for mining, there was some kind of human interaction in the past which involved man-made stuff or certain actions, changes to the environment, the structuring, the rocks by humans, whether it's by making a hole to mine or if it's filling it in when they're done, maybe that can apply to the covered up cave. There you go. Now, the keyhole, you know, the odd few people might say, oh, why have you not done the conclusion on the keyhole in this video? Well, one, because it's not the main focus. We're talking about the covered up cave. And two, I already did a conclusion of that. But I guess we can bring it up slightly in this conclusion, is that, let's say the covered up cave was for mining in some way. Well, maybe that keyhole is linked, because at the end of the day, the covered up cave is literally right next to the keyhole, the shallow keyhole cave. And maybe that hole was like drilled in to test the hardness of the rock, the structuring of it, and maybe to get like a peek in to see, you know, is there anything valuable, any resources, maybe, if that was from a mining perspective. Now, this is where it comes down to the final conclusion, or the final bit, which you've got to take note. Okay, so there's certain similarities between the covered up cave and some of the caves which are shown in Scott's videos, which are natural. So then that would mean that probably the covered up cave isn't a cave and it's natural. But then you've got to put in certain factors. The depth of the covered up cave, it kind of looks deep. Some of the sealant at the bottom base of the covered up cave doesn't really show up in any of Scott's videos, so that makes it unique. So what I'm trying to get at if certain characteristics are shared, but other characteristics aren't and are unique, it makes them stand out. What makes them different, and why are they different? Why are they that way? Are they different because they've been altered with? That kind of idea. I mean, you know, this is the thing. The reason why it isn't so as simple to answer is because I've tried looking online. I tried researching. I tried typing up, okay then, is there some kind of explanation to a covered up cave? I typed in covered up cave. Do you know what came up on a search result? Nothing. Didn't come up with anything. I typed in white marks on rock. What did it come up with? Absolutely nothing of relevance. So it doesn't help. You know, people can say, oh, it's pretty simple, or oh, you should know. Well, okay, then if you don't know, you research online. But what happens if there's no information there? What do? I literally typed in covered up cave. Can you cover up a cave? Example of a covered up cave. Looked at videos on YouTube, looked at images, looked at websites. There's nothing. It's stupid. I don't know if it's some kind of like conspiracy or something to hide stuff, but it's weird. It's almost like covered up caves don't exist. Like it's not a thing. But I think, you know, common sense, places around the world, certain environments, caves specifically used for mining, probably will, you know, be closed off in some way. Some will be, others probably just abandoned and dangerous. You know, the reason why some caves are covered up is simply to stop general public going into them and getting hurt. And other times maybe because it's private land, etc. You know, in a way, you look at Scott's video and you look at that mining site where that shallow cave is with the different colouring rock and that weird white mark going down. You know, that cave, that like drop, there was a drop, obviously, but there was barbed wire around it. So obviously it was like a sign, don't go in or don't go down. And, you know, even at the bottom of the ground, there was like barbed wire and stuff. So obviously it was done like that to prevent people from going in. So some kind of prevention thing. So maybe the covered up cave, if it is one, was done simply as some kind of prevention thing. Don't mean to say it's military, might be mining. But the only counterpoint is what makes the covered up cave unique. Another unique point is, if it was covered up, why would it need to be with the area it is in? You know, if it's kind of remote, kind of far out, not on any of the main paths or anything, where where the location is not really anyone would go near, why would it need to be closed off if really no one ever goes there? The only explanation would be as if you added in the Kenny situation. 2 key points. One, Kenny, what he originally saw and what he then saw, and how he did hint at somewhere just like here. That's one point. Second point is the reaction, what Kenny did. Well, Kenny publicly posted online on YouTube, which now the comment is no longer available. Check the icon above to see what I'm talking about, because I did do a video on that. But on son of an Area 51 worker or technician, he did leave a comment, public. So maybe someone or something saw that. That's the only way you can really base it off, you know. You can say, well, why would a cave need to be covered up if it's in a really remote, empty area where no one will ever go? No one's going to find it, so why do you need to try and hide it? Well, if an individual did find it, which supposedly they did, and then they started talking about it publicly, then maybe there was some kind of action needed to prevent Kenny from going back and finding it. That's all I can think. So at the end of the day, you've got a few crossovers with similarities of characteristics of the covered up cave and the caves in Scots, but also you've got the odd few unique differences between the two, which do stand out a little bit more. So I guess that's the way of looking at it. So So yeah, apologies if the video was long. It's just hard to try and explain and describe at times. But obviously, it was another video, another comparison, just like the previous one I did, trying to either link up similarities or pick out differences which may reinforce the idea that Sean's experience or the sightings are in fact genuine and are dodgy, going off that idea. So the next video, don't know when it will be, because there still needs to be some kind of confirmation on it, of like the understanding behind it, but the next video will not be a comparison, and it will not be looking at something that's already been looked at or talked about. This video, upcoming one, will be looking at something virtually nobody else has seen before or talked about. So it's another one of those sightings. So you'll get the picture, you'll get the idea when you see it, when the video comes out. But I think the next few days probably going to take a break from YouTube, because sometimes it takes a bit of time to upload, edit and all that, and it can get very messy. I mean, this video took like 2 days. Probably could have took one, but it took 2. The editing part was the worst part, because as I was trying to fit together all the videos and then break them up and then repeat that process over and over again and make sure they're all in order, as well as certain transitions and the odd few bits of music in the background, etc., got a bit messy. And then when it came to, you know, editing some of the stuff, I'd take 2 hours, and then I lost everything because the battery died. So I had to redo it all again, spent another hour, and then the app crashed. So I thought, well, that's great. So then I had to do it all bit by bit then, breaking it up instead of doing it in all one go. So, bit of a mess. I hope you understand the video, or the point I'm trying to get at. What I say is, it does look to be of a covered up cave. I don't know if it's suspicious or not, but it definitely looks to be of a cave due to the outlining of it and the gaps and depth within. So that's what I'm basing it off. Hope you enjoyed the video. That's it for now. Goodbye.